Forgot to add myself to the stage. What is up, fellas, and welcome to another episode of Rewriting History with me, the Goob. And today we are going to be talking about Machu Picchu in Peru and the problem that it presents. I really want to talk about the vases, to be honest. But I've been talking about them a lot, and I know you guys are getting tired of them. So we're going to be talking about Machu Picchu. And let me go ahead and share my screen because I'm going to just take you through a couple quick Google searches. And we are going to, let's see, when was Machu Picchu built, right? So Machu Picchu was built roughly between 1450 and 1540. The earliest habitation signs of Machu Picchu, the earliest dated evidence that anyone was inhabiting Machu Picchu goes back to about 1420. That was a recent discovery. So 1420 is when the first habitation, when people first showed up to Machu Picchu. Let's see, when was Machu Picchu abandoned? In 1532, so right around 100 years later. And during the Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire. And, you know, it says here that the reasons why are speculative. People speculate that it was because of the Spanish, but the Spanish never discovered Machu Picchu, because when was Machu Picchu discovered? Not until 1911 or 1902, depending on which account you go with. So just establishing a quick timeline here, Machu Picchu first inhabited around 1420. Within 100 years, people moved onto this mountain. They established a civilization there and then built all of these megalithic ruins. And as we're going to go through these pictures, you're going to see they repaired them, right? So within 100 years, they showed up, established a civilization, built these megaliths, repaired these megaliths, built all of the terraces, and then abandoned it, all within a 100-year time span. And we're going to take a look at some pictures here, which I thought I had open. Let me open them up here. And we're going to see how much sense that actually makes. Trying to present to you guys. There we go. All right. If I full screen this, do you guys? Just trying to get my screen right. Sorry. Here we go. All right. So here's some images of Machu Picchu. They're not in order. I apologize. I didn't have time to order them, but all of these are from Machu Picchu. So you see here these massive megaliths. Okay. Very, very clean. Obviously, these have separated due to earthquakes or some other force disturbing them. But you can see how perfectly these fit together. You look at, you know, the shaping here. That's not a straight line across. There's a straight line there, and then it's shaped for this little block, and then it's shaped for this little block. Like, absolutely ridiculous. And then right next to it, you see this other style of construction. I'm not saying that this isn't impressive. This is very impressive work here, but it's nothing at all like this. And keep in mind, this is all happening, going from absolutely no one ever being on top of this mountain before to this construction and this construction, all within 100 years. Here we have, I don't know why all of these are little. I'll just have to zoom in, I guess. In imitation, I'll show you some of the megalithic windows later in this presentation, but this is a clear imitation. Again, very impressive work, but also very distinctly different. Some reflection pools that are carved right out of the bedrock. Very, very clean, impressive work here. Again, really impressive work, but nothing like that megalithic work. And this is all happening on the same site and all within 100 years. And here we have I don't think you could call these nubs because they're obviously not nubs. They're blocks that are, you know, inserted so they're sticking out. But what kind of facade was built on top of this? Because you also see megalithic nubs similar to this later on. But obviously those serve like a structural purpose, like something was attached to these. Ridiculous megalithic work here. And what is this? I have no idea what this is. And this is something that you find across Peruvian architecture in general. On these mountaintops, you have these, you know, the bedrock, these mountains themselves that are carved into these step formations that really just don't make any sense. And I think it's because they don't make sense because you're looking at evidence of a lost civilization here. Okay. And I've talked a lot on this channel about how I disagree with the Atlantis proponents because they propose everything we're looking at is from 12,000 years ago. Again, look at this construction and then look at this construction. It's right next to each other. It's the same structure. You have these stairs, you have these walls here, again, with the blocks perfectly shaped to each other. Then you've got, you know, normal block construction. But yeah, they think that everything megalithic is from 12,000 years ago. And I've strongly disagreed with that consistently on my channel. I don't think that they're appreciating the forces of destruction. Stuff just doesn't last that long. But if there ever was a place where something could last that long, not only through the forces of destruction of nature, but this cataclysm that people who believe in Atlantis also believe in happened 12,000 years ago that rearranged the face of the earth. What could possibly survive and where could it possibly survive on a mountaintop in Peru? So I'm not suggesting that this is necessarily 12,000 years old. I have no idea how old this is, but I am suggesting this is evidence of a completely lost civilization. There's no signs of an earlier habitation here before 1420. And I don't believe that all of this work here is from 1420 and later. So someone built all of this, and there's absolutely no signs of them left anymore. They are a lost civilization, and they could be 12,000 years old. Here, a very interesting feature you'll see that's consistent across this site. If you look at these windows, they're perfectly even across the top. There's a straight line across the top of these windows. But then you look at the bottom of these windows, and it's not quite as perfect. And there's an argument to be made, especially if you look at this one from the other side, that this window was incomplete. You can see that these two, you know, look more flat. It also looks like these windows are being carved out after the wall has been constructed, which is rather interesting. And then you look over at this one and you can see it's lower down on the side. And from the inside, you can see it's more carved out on one side than the other side. So I think this window, for some reason, has been left incomplete, and it would have been brought into line with these other three. Unfinished architecture with these megaliths is another thing that you find more often than you don't. Why are these things left unfinished? It's very, very strange. Again, just two totally different styles of architecture. This architecture, this architecture, this architecture, potentially even like three styles. You see, you know, this very cyclopean style here, very large blocks. They're shaped very kind of naturally. And then over here, you have very straight blocks. You still have that polygonal nature, but potentially more than two styles of construction and potentially more than two phases of construction. You also have a lot of very impressive water management going on at this site. There are irrigation channels all over. And again, like really impressive, obviously precise enough for it to function hundreds of years later as an irrigation channel still, but also like completely unstraight. They didn't even attempt to make it straight. Straightness doesn't seem to be an important feature. It might even be like intentionally unstraight because it's water. Water flows. Water isn't straight. And I think you'll see with some of these other water features that that might be kind of an incorporated design here, especially this one. Perfect. These images aren't in order, but this one happens to be. So you see here, there's water coming out of this wall. You can't really tell here, but there's in the middle of this wall, it comes out, it drains into this little pool, and it drains down that drain right here, down through the rock, and then it serpentines around, and it continues serpentining down there with more drains. More windows here. These windows are all over, and you can see in the back there's a rock there. They're not actual windows. Some of them are, but most of them are just these cubbies. And it's like, what is that cubby for? Are people supposed to be walking up here? Everything about Peruvian architecture is absolutely baffling. It makes no sense. Trying to make sense out of Peruvian architecture and like its purpose, it's got to be the most confusing architecture on the planet. Like, what is this cubby for? Obviously, it's not a real window. It's blocked off in the back, so it's a cubby for something to be displayed or whatever. But like, who is here? These are stairs coming up here. These are stairs coming up, on the other side as well. They go like this up. Okay, so you got stairs over here that you can see in the top right, and then other stairs that you can't see out of frame on the bottom left. And they're coming up. So it's like, no one's like, are you hiking over this shit to look? It doesn't make sense. It's just very confusing stuff. Here's some more megalithic, walls at Machu Picchu with some nubs on them. Again, this is that very cyclopean style where it looks like all of these blocks are just melted together. I mean, look at the angles on this. Like, it curves up there, and then it's got another concave angle there. Also, I want to talk about natron theory, but I've got Marcel Fodi coming on soon, so I'm holding off on talking about natron theory and geopolymers. But another I think very strong candidate for, Peru is again a very strong candidate for another theory, which is geopolymer and some other very strange rock anomalies, which I'm not even going to get into in this video. This is just about Machu Picchu and the fact that all of this happened and was abandoned in 100 years, allegedly. People first visited this mountain, started constructing this megalithic site. Look at the very square blocks here. Again, there's multiple different styles of construction. Are all of these styles of construction happening all within the same period of 100 years, where you have these very square megalithic blocks, the cyclopean megalithic blocks, these walls back here, which are rather impressive, but nowhere, it's just this one site is an absolute mess. This is, in my opinion, pretty obvious evidence. And look at the levels of terracing that's happened here. Peru has millions of terraces, but the entire mountain of that Machu Picchu is on is terraced. This is a massive level of work. They did all of this and then for no apparent reason just abandoned it. Less than 100 years later, they built all of this irrigation. They built all of these terraces. They built all of these megaliths with multiple different styles and multiple different qualities. And that's another thing, is like, these terraces are not of the super megalithic variety. These terraces are not of this style, not of this very clean, squarish megalith style. Again, multiple different styles of construction here at this one site. More irrigation. Some of the stairs, there's not a lot of images of the stairs. That's why I included this one. And then you have, again, this is the style of like the terraces, the same structure, the same type of building style that the actual buildings are made out of is also how the terraces, you can see there in the background, the terraces, and on this side of the mountain as well, more terraces. So if the Inca in 1400 built all of these, it would seem that they also built all of the terraces. Because it's the same construction style. And if the Inca were doing all of that, I mean, that is a ridiculous amount of work to be doing in 100 years. But it also still is very curious why you see here's one doorway, and we'll see another doorway of much higher quality, several doorways of much higher quality later. This is pretty impressive work here. I'm not trying to knock this work. This is very impressive stone building here. But then you compare it to, stuff like this, and then there's even more impressive work than stuff like this. Way back in the beginning, you're looking at stuff like this, or with the more natural but absolutely massive and then oddly shaped windows carved right into it's a mess to try and make sense of this one site. And here we have an irrigation channel and a pretty massive megalith here, and it's just abandoned on the site here. Like, did they break it and then just leave it there? I mean, you can see it's broken here. So like, were they trying to transport it and they broke it, and that's how they disposed of it? They just left it on the side there. They're able to terrace all of this. They're able to make these megaliths and move these megaliths. But if one breaks, they just abandon it in the middle of their set. I don't know. None of this makes any sense to me. Does this make any sense to you guys? I'm going to go ahead and drop the invite link. So if you guys want to call in, go ahead and call in and let me know what you guys think. But I think you're looking at a few different levels of construction here. Look at the, again, totally different block style here, totally different construction style here on the bottom, topped off with much smaller rocks, much looser fitting. This was all done by the same people, all in a span of 100 years. And that's where this little cubby is. We were looking at this from, where those people were standing. A picture was taken down, looking down. That's that pool. This is this little serpentine here. That's the little cubby right there. What is that cubby for, man? And this is a strange amalgamation of like loose stones, big stairs on top. The irrigation there was this like repaired? Was this reassembled and repaired later, or what are we looking at here? I don't know. I can't really make sense of any of this. And I think it's because it doesn't make sense, especially through the lens of all of this being done over the course of 100 years and then just being abandoned. And the people, the Inca, they claim they didn't build this. Not all of this, not the big massive megaliths. So, I don't know when this was originally constructed, when construction first began here, if it was 12,000 years ago. I suspect, while that's possible, I suspect it probably was more recent than that. I have no idea. It could be anywhere, right? 2,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, anywhere. It really could be anywhere, because this is, again, on top of a mountain, one of the few places where I think stuff like this could actually last and survive. And you do see across the mountaintops of Peru massive levels of destruction to these megaliths as well. But yeah, I do believe that whatever civilization first started building this was not the Inca. I do believe we are looking at multiple phases of construction here. I think Brian Forrester, and people like that are on the right track, that you're looking at clearly two different levels of technology and construction, at least two different levels. And where is the evidence? There's no evidence of any human habitation more than 1420, before 1420. And so I think that lost civilizations are a hell of a lot more common than people think. Like, stuff disappears. We don't find stuff. And like I said, I wanted to talk more about the vases. If you guys have been here from the beginning of this channel, one of the few Goob original theories that I have is that the lost civilization we're looking for is not 12,000 years ago. Again, massive polygonal masonry here. Totally different style from the other stuff. You got the square megalith, super clean masonry. You got this stuff. You got the small little rubble blocks. But one of my Goob original ideas is that the lost civilization isn't 12,000 years ago. It's more like 6,000 years ago. Okay. The idea that Atlantis was wiped out and then just chilled and did nothing for 6,000 years and then pops back up and starts spreading civilization around the globe again doesn't make much sense to me. Where were they for 6,000 years? But the idea of a lost civilization kind of spreading, restarting civilization around the globe isn't a crazy one to me, especially with all the stories that Graham Hancock has collected. And especially when you look at like Sumeria and this civilization that just explodes from nothing to the peak of civilization. I think that's quite possibly because it was a civilization restarting from one that has been lost. And relating this to the vases, the Nicadan culture that created these vases 5,000-6,000 years ago, they weren't even a civilization yet. They did not have the base requirements to even be called a civilization. So these people that aren't even in a civilization yet are creating tens of thousands of these precise vases that we're struggling to explain how they were made today. There's a great podcast, Karoly Poka or something like that, where he talked about the vases. I'll put it in the link after the show. I'll put it in the description after the show. But it again makes sense that these vases are actually being introduced by some outside civilization rather than being a product of this civilization. The discrepancy is just too large with these vases. A civilization that isn't even a civilization and creating these vases that are more impressive than anything else we see up until at least like the 18th, 19th dynasty. So, yeah. A lost civilization existing around 6,000 years ago, around when these vases pop up, around when Sumeria pops up. I think there is a lost civilization there. I have no idea where we would find it. I don't know where to look. Okay. But, and I think with Peru, you're seeing evidence of another lost civilization. And the argument I'm trying to make here is that I think civilizations can be lost a hell of a lot easier than people like to think, a big argument that's been made against the vases and against the natron theory recently has been to, say, oh, technology isn't just lost like that. That's like a ridiculous thing to say, is that technology is just lost. Okay, look at Peru. Let's ignore the lost civilization, 12,000 years old, whatever. Let's go by the mainstream narrative. In Machu Picchu, you have people establishing a civilization on top of a mountain, establishing a town, a village, a city on top of a mountain, building megaliths, irrigation, the terracing. Okay, they are terraforming an entire mountaintop, and all of that just disappeared and was lost and totally forgotten about. If you ask the Incas, they cannot tell you how they built it. They'll tell you they didn't build it. All of that knowledge and information was lost, not just the technology, all of it, all the information. And that's from 500 years ago. Look at all of South America and Central America. We are rediscovering with LIDAR now a massive, massive civilization that was lost. Again, just like 500 years ago. We're going back through thousands and thousands of years. This idea that we've identified all of the civilizations, we're not missing any major pieces out there, major players out there. What about the sea people? We still haven't identified the sea people. We know they existed. It's pretty undeniable that they existed. And they were major, major players. We have no idea who they are. They are a lost civilization. So just wrap your head around the idea that there's a shitload of lost civilizations out there. We have not even begun to identify all of them. Who knows what's out there? And I think that Machu Picchu is a very compelling case for just that. Let's keep looking at these pictures. Feel free to call in, fellas, if you want to call in. Beautiful imitation of those windows, right? But this is clearly an imitation. Even if it's by the same people, this is clearly an imitation of that more impressive architecture. crazy, crazy water features here. Really, really impressive and beautiful water features here. I will say also, I found a lot of AI photos when trying to gather photos for this. One website was a travel website trying to sell tours of Machu Picchu, and every single photo on their website was an AI photo, which was crazy to me. That's got to be like fucking fraud or something. But especially when looking at the water features, when looking for images of the water features, man, the AI photos were definitely coming out. So I'm pretty sure none of these are AI, or if they are, like it's very minor AI, like this water being added, but it's not actually altering the image. I don't think I got any AI in here though, but it's just something to be aware of. Look at I've got another image of this doorway more zoomed out. Beautiful, yeah, breathtaking. Look at the background here. Like imagine living in this place. But again, just pointing out the very impressive stonework here, and then in the background, totally different style of stonework right next to it. Is this two different styles of stonework here? You got or is it just bigger stones on the bottom followed with smaller, more regular stones up top? These are more cyclopean, more irregularly shaped. Then you still have a bit of that up here, but these are a lot more square. Or is that all the same? Kind of blends together in some places. Kind of gets hard to tell. But in other places, the discrepancies are massive. Just, again, a beautiful, beautiful place. The terracing is very impressive to me. I think the terracing goes underappreciated. And it's not just Machu Picchu. There are millions of terraces in Peru. The mountains of Peru, the level of terraforming in Peru is insane. And it's not just the terraces, it's roads. Look at this terrain. Mountains and forests is what Peru is full of. And these people, whoever these people were, they absolutely dominated their landscape. They terraced all the mountains. They built roads straight through all that terrain. Here again, very square, right? Totally different style of architecture than what we've been looking at. Over here, we'll see from some different angles, this is like part of the mountain. So it's incorporating natural boulders with this very, very square style in this area. Very impressive window. It looks like there was more going on here. Not entirely sure what. Potentially a small little nub over there. More water features, more nubs, or not nubs, more nooks, right? And again, looking like they were carved in after the wall was built, which is just kind of strange. And it's, the seam is there. If you can see in this picture, right? The seam is going across the middle of these nooks, and then they're carved up into that block and down into that block. And who's looking at this? This is like a tank right here. What are those nooks for? Who and what are those nooks for? You get very, very clean stonework here with the water features. Another little drain going down there to continue this. Really impressive stuff. And again, this is also impressive. Strange windows, right? But totally different style. Not anywhere near the same level. Same location, though. More water management. Super impressive. Look at the way that they've formed the bedrock here, up into part of this door. They've cleared out the door, obviously. And then just, like the top of this block isn't even a straight line. It's bent to match these other blocks. Just, it's very, very impressive. More water features, more super impressive architecture here, carving into the bedrock with this very, very clean design. I don't know. Is this all the same people to you? Look at what's directly behind it. You look at this, and you look at this, the ground, around it, and then you look at that. All the same people, all within 100 years, and then all abandoned. No one knows anything about it. And I haven't gotten to the royal tomb yet. I want to talk about the royal tomb. This is that same door. Actually, this is a different door than I was showing you earlier. But maybe it is the same door. Anyways, very impressive. Very large lentil on top. Some large blocks up here. Definitely megalithic. And, you know, if you look at this, you can see extending from this door, it's not the same quality. Obviously, this is all the same structure, and they just put more attention into the door here because it's a more critical feature. So again, it does get confusing. It does kind of blend together in certain areas where these different qualities match, but then you have like really distinct differences here, you know, where it's one quality and then a very different quality up top. Is that just a choice that was made? They just decided to stop building in this level of quality and switched over halfway through the building? More water features, very impressive megalithic walls all over. Even the less impressive stuff is still really, really impressive here. It's all very impressive. It's just that some of it is super duper impressive. I'm actually not 100% sure this is Machu Picchu. I think this is another site that might have snuck in here. This is Machu Picchu, though. And I've shown this before because these nubs, again, like those nubs that I was showing up here, same, you can see them in this image as well, are clearly like a structural thing. Like there was a window on this of some type. And you can't really see it in this image either, but this is a massive, massive piece of the bedrock that this is built on top of and a part of. Like, okay, so here's the bedrock, right? These, I think this is the bedrock. I'm not 100% confident on that. Kind of, maybe it's not the bedrock. Either way, these are massive stones here on the base. And if this is bedrock here and bedrock here, then all of this had to be carved out. But looking at it closer, I don't necessarily think that's the case. But still, you see this stone here. How much of this was like leveled off? How much stone was removed here? I really have no idea, but I think it might have been a really large amount. I don't know. Yeah, is that the bedrock? Kind of looks like some of that is coming straight out of the ground, but then, you know, it looks like blocks right there. So is some of this still buried? You know, it looks like that is still buried. So maybe none of this is bedrock and it's just not fully excavated. This is another angle of that same structure with the window and the nubs on the window that I was showing. This is the interior of it. So, you know, really, really precise stonework here. And then in the middle of whatever this room is, it looks kind of defensive to me. It looks like a defensive little tower to me. That's the floor. You just leave the floor as this natural lumpy. It's just really confusing. Is that not confusing to you? So much effort went into this. Whatever this is, so much effort went into it. Really, really impressive stonework. But then this is how you leave the floor. And maybe they built like a wooden structure on top of this. Maybe this was more leveled out or something with wood. But I don't know. It's just all very strange. And here, look at the size of the megaliths on this wall. I don't know if this is a natural boulder that the wall has been built around, or if that's potentially a megalithic boulder that was put there. I think that's probably a natural boulder considering just the size of it. But you see this clearly one style of building, and then right up against it, you know, this other style of building, which is still very impressive. So many different building styles going on in this one site. Okay, that's the end of those photographs. I do have, yeah, and actually, I don't know if I have an image of it pulled up or if it was in the gallery. I did have an image of it pulled up. I think, here we go. Yeah, let me see if I can share this tab because I actually have a roof, an image of a roof here to show you, Mr. Slav. Oh, I've gotten my windows confused. I've lost my StreamYard window. Did it close? What happened? Am I streaming? Shit. I don't know what happened. I still see the light on my camera. I can't find my StreamYard tab on my computer, though. Okay. I got it. I didn't notice you called in, Mr. Gulag. I don't know how long you've been waiting. Sorry.
Boomer moment there.
Yeah, I love it. That was strange. Anyways, what's up, man?
Wanted to say that if you don't understand South American architecture, then you haven't done enough mushrooms and TMT yet, because we know that those cultures were on psychedelics all the time, so their architecture must reflect that.
Yeah, and I think you do see some of that, but then you also just see really, really weird stuff, like the way that the bedrock is shaped in a lot of places. I might even try and pull up some of that too. I was looking at some of it on Twitter earlier today, but
yeah, also wanted to share this map that you put on the screen for a moment there.
Yeah, there's a roof there for Slav. And then I'll go back to your screen here. But that was a roof for Slav.
Like you can see, back during the Ice Age, it was a lot easier for Europeans and Africans to cross into South America and North America because the sea levels were much lower. And the part that's there in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, that's all, right now they are volcanoes that are under the sea, but back then these were volcanoes that were above sea level, and they had just recently risen from the sea as well. So these areas in the middle of the Atlantic would have been insanely fertile. Like if you had some seeds that you brought over from the mainland,
like Hawaii.
Yeah, kind of like a Hawaii right now. Yeah. Like, do you have any idea if we have searched for lost civilizations in the middle of the Atlantic where there are these big land masses on this map?
Well, there is the Baltic Sea anomaly.
That's not in the Atlantic, though.
What's that?
That's not in the Atlantic. I mean, like in the
right,
middle.
Right. That's kind of the point, though, is that like it's difficult to search the oceans no matter what part of the ocean. Like, so I don't think a whole lot of serious search for archaeology has been done there. It's difficult to do.
Dredging has found evidence of human civilization in the Doggerland, which is now the North Sea.
Yeah.
But I think we would find a lot just by dredging the parts of the Atlantic Ocean floor that were above sea level back during the Ice Age. We might find evidence of arrowheads and stuff like that, and this would help prove that there were humans living there back then, and they might have crossed into the Americas as well.
I think it would be a bit of a needle in a haystack situation. I mean, just like looking at this is a large area that this stretch of islands is covering, and so were people on them? I bet they were. But trying to dredge up proof of that, you could strike gold right away, or I feel like you could probably be at it for years and be right next to where you're looking for and just never find it, So again, it's just it is genuine. I'm not trying to defend like the mainstream too much here, but ocean archaeology is a genuinely difficult task.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if it's like 400 feet below the sea level.
Yeah. No. But talking about Peru and different people coming here, you have I just read Robert Seffer, so that's the name in my head now. But the not Graham Hancock, the other white haired dude. I said his name earlier in the show, but he goes on about the mummies and the red haired mummies from the Caucasus Mountains found in Peru, and they're not terribly old. They're either like 1500 or maybe even more recent, like 500 years old. But they're not like 12,000 years old. They're definitely post ice age. But there are some red haired, elongated skull, Caucasus DNA mummies that have been found in Peru.
Interesting.
Yeah, and some of them don't have the sagittal suture. So not only is their skull elongated, he claims the volume of their skull is noticeably larger, and some of them they're missing a suture in their head. So they actually have less bones in their head than we do.
I've seen a video of someone handling a skull like that in modern days. A lot of these artifacts are probably just in private collections and not in museums, which might be a better place for them after all, with NAGPRA and everything.
Brian Forrester is the guy's name. And yes, the skulls that he has inspected and had tested. He's done DNA testing at multiple different labs of these skulls. They were from private collections. He has worked with some from some museums in Peru as well. I guess the museums in Peru, some of them are more willing to work with people like Brian Forrester than, American museums, for example. But yeah, a lot of them are in private collections. It's kind of crazy because like he'll get them mailed to him. People who have them in the private collections will mail them to him, and he'll just like open up this cardboard box and pull out this ancient skull, which is kind of like in bubble wrap, which is kind of a weird thing to see. It seems, I don't know, like more than just a cardboard box and bubble wrap should be appropriate for that, but that's a separate issue, I suppose.
I got an idea for a Netflix series that might be really cheap to make and would blow people away. Like, have Netflix produce a show where in each episode they visit and film some kind of a private archaeological collection, and they don't tell anyone where it is or who owns it, but at least the public would see what's hidden in private collections.
Yeah, I was thinking about how to facilitate something along those lines, and that's actually not a bad idea. What you just said, that's better than I didn't really come up with anything. But yeah, there's a ton of privately held artifacts out there, and a lot of that is illegal. And even if it's not illegal, it's looked at as morally, wrong by a lot of people. And so these people that have these very impressive private collections, they don't share them. They don't show them. They don't let anyone know that they have them. And they just sit there. And it really is a shame. And yeah, if there was some way to anonymously get these people to show off their collections, but facilitating that and actually having genuine protection for these people, that's not going to be I'm not holding my breath that something like that'll happen, but hey, maybe if Joe Rogan or someone with like enough influence can get behind it, that would be so cool. That would be so cool.
Totally, yeah. I would watch it a lot. Yeah, that's everything I wanted to talk about. And thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, man. I thought StreamYard would like give me a ding, and some kind of noise when someone called, but I didn't hear anything. So I have to actually be looking at the screen to see if you guys call. My buttons have gone away. I was going to reshare the link, But my buttons disappeared. I got them back. I had to zoom out of the page. All right, let me read through chat, and then I'm gonna. There's two websites I found that had really good galleries of photos, and I started scrolling through one of them. I'm just gonna keep looking through those and read through chat here real quick. Yeah, so they don't really know when it was built because the earliest habitation and the earliest mummies, which where were the damn images I had? I saved them for the end, but then they weren't there. Okay, so I'm going to have to find images of the temple or the royal tomb because I wanted to talk about that for sure. So that's the thing. The royal tomb. Let me pull up some images of the royal tomb. I gotta find that because this is also where it just doesn't make sense. It's a small image, but it's a decent image. So this is the royal tomb in Machu Picchu. Okay. This is that window with the strange nubs up there. This is that rock that I was telling you about in a couple images that you saw the top of, that structure is built on top there. And then this is this massive natural rock it's built on top of. And inside here is the royal tomb. I am sharing this, right? Okay, I am. And this is where 100 bodies have been found. I don't know exactly where in the structure because I've found a couple images inside this little crevice here, but there's just more false windows in there. There's not enough space in that little room there for 100 bodies to be excavated from. But somewhere in this royal tomb, 100 skeletons were excavated from there. And the skeletons go back to 1450. So the earliest sign of habitation that was just recently found, and you know how I feel about dating, and I'm pretty sure they're trying to stretch these dates back as far as they possibly can. And the farthest they've been able to stretch it back is to 1420. So the earliest possible signs of habitation, 1420, bodies already found in this royal tomb in 1450. This is some of the most impressive megalithic work on this site is this structure up here, the way it is naturally formed to, the natural boulder. The cuts inside of here, again, just super duper clean and interesting. It's also very confusing. What are the features in here? What is the purpose? I guess I got to drink more ayahuasca to understand. But this is the royal tomb, and you can't really tell. I really need I had better images. I had a bunch of images specifically of the royal tomb pulled up, and I don't know what the hell happened to them. Again, more tech issues. I had them all saved for the end of the gallery, and none of them were at the end of the gallery. None of them were there. You can't really tell from this low quality image, but again, just this seamless blending of natural stone features and almost a Picasso-esque man-made features here because it's not straight lines. It's all curvy-wurvy, but seamless and flawless and kind of makes sense, right? You get this super impressive architecture for the royal tomb, but then right outside of it, like this is part of it. Not impressive architecture at all, at least compared to some of the other stuff we're seeing. So like this is the royal tomb. This is where you would assume they would put the most effort into making it perfect because it's the royal tomb. And it is in many ways. Ridiculous, shaping of the bedrock in here. All right. Ridiculous flowing of natural to man-made here. Ridiculous, flawless architecture up here where you can't even fit a piece of paper in it. And then you got these loose rocks over here, like as a part of the same structure, as a part of the royal tomb as well. None of this adds up to me. And it's frustrating that my images aren't actually there for the royal tomb, all the images that I had gathered, but whatever, such is life. So, yeah, so they don't know when it was built. That was all to answer that question, but when was it built? and they don't know when it was built, but in that time period of between 1420, by 1450, it would seem they already had the royal tomb constructed, and then by 1530, it was completely abandoned. You know, I don't know, because normally my arguments are that, yes, of course we can replicate these things, but Machu Picchu has some really, really large megaliths on top of a really, really tall mountain. How do we get those up the mountain? I'm not sure. And then the fitting of those blocks, also really, really precise. I'm honestly not 100% sure. I think theoretically, sure, right? Theoretically, but practically, that's getting to be a stretch. And yes, I didn't go into that aspect much, but there are Peru, and specifically Machu Picchu, is one of the more compelling cases of geopolymer, in my opinion. I don't have the images here, but there's some of the really large megalithic boulders where it looks like 2x4s essentially were pressed into them while they're still soft. Like, it looks like there were these stones were potentially poured into like a bag, a soft mold, and it had wood on the outside, holding it in place, and you can like see the impressions from that, is what it seems like. Wandering Wolf talks about this and shows some of those images if you want to check out him and his conversations about Machu Picchu and geopolymer. But yeah, I think Peru is definitely one of the more compelling sites for geopolymer. You also have the H blocks at Pumapunku, which Davidovitz tested and found organic material, found seashells in, I think it was seashells, some kind of organic material in the Pumapunku H blocks. They're volcanic andesite. You can't have organic material in volcanic andesite, which would seem to indicate that those are, in fact, geopolymer, which is what many people have speculated about. The mainstream, of course, insists that that's crazy. I don't think that's crazy. Yeah, and that's I didn't even show. I might try and pull up a specific image on Twitter, but there's on Machu Picchu and many of the mountaintop sites in Peru, extreme weathering, extreme damage. And this is all from 500 years. And then again, you're looking at like places where they've clearly repaired this site. So they built it out of these massive megaliths. Something damaged it. And then they repair it not with massive megaliths again, but with tiny loose stones. And all of this is happening over a 100-year time period. Yeah. So, it could have been for form. It could have been for function. It could have been for both. But yeah. They obviously could have made it straight. I guess the point there is that they very easily could have made it straight. They were capable of making it straight. They made a deliberate choice to not make their irrigation system straight for whatever reason. Maybe. They don't necessarily make sense location-wise, especially like that one that was inside of like the pool for the irrigation thing. It's dropped down in this tank, enclosed on like all four sides. Why do you need light for that? Maybe. I don't know. Terra Preta did build the Amazon. Yeah. Again, the level of terraforming that the South Americans and Central Americans did, these people were dominating their land. They created Terra Preta, which still is functioning today, still keeping the rainforest alive today. The rainforest, I believe, is man-made. The entire rainforest is man-made. The concentration of fruit trees in the rainforest does not seem to be natural. You have terra preta. They're creating the earth itself. They're creating the rainforest with fruit trees and everything else. They are building roads through all of this mountainous terrain, dominating it, spanning hundreds of miles, these roads, connecting cities, massive cities, larger than anything in Europe at the same time. The millions of terraces on these mountaintops in Peru. The level of terraforming and domination that they expressed upon the land cannot be understated. And all of this was lost. Going back to lost civilizations and how easily this was lost. I'm talking about the level of dominating the land that they achieved, and all of it was lost. We had no idea that they had done any of this. We are just now rediscovering this recently. Machu Picchu in the early 1900s, rediscovered, totally lost. All of these other sites that are being discovered through LiDAR. The idea that civilizations, huge civilizations, grand civilizations, technologically impressive civilizations can be lost and have been lost is a certainty. It's not like a ridiculous idea. To suggest that it's not possible is the ridiculous idea. Yeah, I bet visually it's nice. It might have served a function of cleaning the water, and it sounded nice. I bet all of those. I bet all of those were factors. Yeah, maybe. Why is there such degeneration over 100 years? If that's the case, though, we're talking some serious degeneration. We're talking very, very, very impressive work here with the irrigation and everything else. And then again, it's not that the other work isn't impressive. The other work's still impressive, but it's comparing a Model T to a Formula One. Like a Model T is still impressive too, but it's no Formula One. I don't know, man. Yeah, and like how much of it could be that? Like the megaliths that we're seeing, are those megaliths all from that mountain? Oh, I froze. All right, I'll be right back. I know how to fix this now. It's annoying that this is still happening, but I know how to fix it. Okie dokie. So, where was I in the chat here? Where was I in the chat? Oh man, you guys have been chatting. Right. And that might be the case. Like if all of those huge stones that you find on top of Machu Picchu are from on top of Machu Picchu, that could make sense for Machu Picchu. I'm not honestly sure where the megaliths came from on Machu Picchu. I do, however, know that other mountaintops in Peru, like Ollantaytambo, I believe, there are massive, massive granite megaliths that have been taken from miles and miles away and dragged up this mountain. So I get that's a different site. But yeah, I don't know. I would like to know where the largest stones from Machu Picchu are actually coming from, and I didn't confirm that before this episode. I'll try and figure that out before next week. All right. Well, if anyone else wants to call in, give me a call. And if not, I think that's the episode. I'm just finishing reading through chat here. And I do want to, I might show off a couple more pictures, but yeah, I don't know the answer to that either. I'd have to look that up. But I think, again, not again, but I think similarly to Sigiriya, again, that one you can call it whatever you want, apparently, where it's also the top of a mountain, but they just very carefully funneled all of the water from the whole surface of that mountaintop, into one central location. I'm assuming that's what's being done here as well. Yes, it is the top of a mountain, but it's still a pretty large mountaintop. And if they're funneling all of the rain from that mountaintop into one, irrigation system, really impressive, right? Really impressive. And to support all of those terraces, which were for growing food, like on the top of a mountain, you've got this water management like that. Everything about it is super impressive. But yeah, good questions for me to look up for you guys. Yes, I don't have any pulled up, but I did see some photos of just that. And again, AI was coming into play. So if you want to look into that, I have a feeling you're going to have to contend with AI photographs and sorting through the real and the fake. Okay. That gets pretty hard to explain with the really, really big ones. And I also don't know how efficient that would be even for the small ones. There are videos on people on YouTube, though, fitting two irregularly shaped stone blocks together and doing so with nothing but like stone pounding tools. And they were able to do a decent job. Again, it just doesn't necessarily explain like the really big ones in like these theoretically. Is it theoretically possible with this stuff? Most of the time, the theoretical answers are yes. Like you could tunnel out of prison with a spoon, but is it practical? Is that the way that, like, taking theoretical to the extreme and then trying to go, well, yeah, theoretically you could do that. So that means that's how all of it was done. I think is just very mistaken. And it's really weird, the double standards, like, not to go back to the vases, but like we're comparing our theoretical peak of production. Can we theoretically produce one of these vases? Because no one has, right? So in our modern civilization, with all of our modern high tech, can we theoretically make one? Yes, we can. And so because we theoretically can, with our peak of technology, that's somehow used to write off people who don't even have a civilization, making them in the tens of thousands, 6,000 years ago without any modern technology. It's like the comparison there is so ridiculous. I don't know how anyone makes it with a straight face. And not only do they make it with a straight face, but they take that comparison as proof against anything remarkable in the past. Like, just some totally fucked up ways of thinking. And it's totally common. Like, that's the standard way of thinking about this stuff. It makes no sense. Yeah, and like I said, that could help explain specifically Machu Picchu. I do want to look into that. I do want to get an answer to where are those megaliths coming from. But there are plenty of other mountaintop locations in Peru that have even larger megaliths that are not from that mountain. So they clearly were capable of dragging these huge stones up these huge mountains. And even if they are all local, even if all of those big stones are directly from that mountaintop, like, there's still very anomalous. I don't think even I'm having more tech issues. Like, I don't think all my images are showing, because I don't think even the image that was my thumbnail was in this gallery. And if you look at my thumbnail, and I had a better image, a wider shot of that same location as well. I'm just flicking through my pictures here, sorry. But if you look at my thumbnail, you see on one side, the one wall is a clearly different quality. And in a wider shot, you can see it a hell of a lot better than in that image. But yeah, this image isn't even in the gallery of the images I saved. I don't know what's going on with my computer and why it's not like what's happening to my images. But yeah, even with the hilltop removal of the megaliths, you just still see these very odd discrepancies in quality right next to each other that doesn't really explain. Nor does it explain the other sites that have other megaliths that aren't from local sites. But yeah, that's the episode. That's what I have to say about Peru. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I just reposted the link, so you've got 30 seconds to call in before I end the episode. Otherwise, that's it, fellas. On the 12th, I've got Marcel Fodi to come and talk about the natron theory, so that should be good fun. Don't know what I'll be talking about next week, but I'll catch you guys then. Peace out.